With the help of Hashem, we are learning Rosh Hashana Davav. We left off on Davav, Amud Aleph, 10 lines from the top of the Amud. We are still in the middle of the sugya of Bal Ta'acher, as the Gemara is explaining, that when it says in the Mishnah that on the first day of Nisan, that day is Rosh Hashana Liragolim, that is going according to the opinion of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, who holds that if a person makes all different types of vows of giving things to the Beis HaMikdash, even though ideally fulfill your vow ASAP, even though when the first of the three regalim come by, whichever one comes by, and anyways you're obligated, you a man is obligated to go to Yerushalayim, to go to the Beis HaMikdash, then they have a positive commandment to fulfill all of their vows, and if they don't, they violated the positive commandment. But our discussion is, from what point is someone violating the negative commandment? What negative commandment? So we learned a pasuk in Chumash Devarim Perek Chav Gimel pasuk Chav Beis, that the pasuk says that Loi Sa'acher L'Shalmei, thou shall not delay to pay your vows. That love, that negative commandment, is violated when, let's say now, when 3 Yomim Tovim go by, and the first of the 3 has to be in sequence with having Chag HaMatzos or Chag HaPesach being the first. Now, we will start today learning a Braisa. It's amazing. That quotes a pasuk from the Chumash. In that portion, in the Varim, again, we're speaking about Perek Chav Gimel, not pasuk Chav Beis that we learned about, pasuk Chav Dalet. And we're going to quote the entire pasuk. It almost sounds like Hashem is saying the same thing twice. The Braisa is going to take apart that verse, showing you mamish the same thing, that all different types of vows, if a person doesn't fulfill their vow at a certain point, they're going to be violating, thou shall not delay, loy bal ta'achar. We're going to see from that pasuk that there's a positive commandment that is also violated if they don't fulfill their vow. And we're going to have to understand, why do we need to have two psukim that mamish appears to be saying the same? There's a mitzvah say, as a mitzvah loisa say, not to delay your vows. Now we're going to learn many details. First of all, when we speak about a person making a commitment to bring something to the holy temple, sometimes the word that's used is a neder. Other times the word that's used is a nedava. Neder is a vow. A vow means when a person says, here, this is the key, harei olai, it is incumbent upon me to bring a carbon shlamim. When I use those words, being that the obligation is on me, even after I designated an animal, and I did everything right, but for some reason, a mishap out of my control, an oinus happened and that animal did not make it to the Beis HaMikdash. I'm not exempt. It's upon me to do something. Until it's done, I am called chayev ba'achrayis. I am responsible. But that's called a neder. A nedava means when a person goes to a specific item, in our case to an animal, and the person says, this animal is a shlamim. Nothing is upon me. This animal is a shlamim. Obviously, the person has to take it to the holy temple. But if something happened beyond one's control, the animal died, the animal was stolen, I'm not obligated to compensate. I'm not responsible. I'm not chayev b'achrayis. But we're going to learn that there's a possibility that a person can say harei olai and still not be responsible. And that is when a person says harei olai on one condition, that I'm not responsible. America. You sign a document and everything, but I'm not responsible for this person. Then harei olai will be called a nedava, and we'll see the consequence of that. We're going to learn that after 3 Yomim Tovim passed, or I'm saying 3 Yomim Tovim because those of us who learned the Daf Daled, we actually had Daf Daled Amud Beis 5 different opinions as to when do you violate Bal Ta'achar. But from whenever you violate Bal Ta'achar, Chavra, listen to this, from then onwards, every single day, you violate that negative commandment again. Whatever the consequences are. Let's just speak about violating God's rule. I'm saying every single day because since at night you may not bring korbanos, so there is a break of the time. I can't even bring it. Then when morning comes about, again, now I'm able to bring it. Nachamal, I'm going to violate Bal Ta'achar. We're going to learn the shita of Rabbeinu HaKadosh, Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi. In general, that when the Torah gives you a halacha that's connected to a year, we'll give examples. How do you count a year? What is a year? Well, a year is a year. No, a year is not a year. Rabbi holds a year in halacha. It's amazing. We're Yidden. Our calendar is dafka, not exclusively a solar calendar. We have the most sophisticated, amazing calendar that's out there, but When the Torah speaks about a year, it means 365 days, meaning the days that it takes for the sun to come back to the same place. And we will see, therefore, that when a Braisa that we will learn weiter, Bal Ta'achar, says that you violate Bal Ta'achar either when 3 Yomim Tovim go by or when a full year goes by. So we're going to spend the whole Davav Amid Beis, or almost all of it, trying to find a scenario. How can you have a year going by without 3 Yomim Tovim going by? No matter when you make a vow, if a full year goes by, in that year, you're going to have the 3 Yomim Tovim. So we're going to learn Shitas Rebbe. If a year means 365 days, I'll speak it out when we learn Amid Beis. No, you can have 3. You can have a full year go by. If it's a Shana Me'uberes, a leap year will have 383 days, 384 days. I'll give you the dates, and 3 Yomim Tovim won't go by. We're going to learn the law about an heir. If a father designates an animal for a korban, and the father passes away, the children, in many cases, are obligated to bring that animal on behalf of their father. Not in all cases. If a chatos was designated by the father passes away, that animal has to be left to die. That's one of the 5 chatois hamesas. But when the children have to bring it, we're going to have a discussion. Are the children also going to violate Bal Ta'achar? They didn't make the vow. Or no, the animal, they are an extension of the father, and they will violate Bal Ta'achar. We're going to have the very big, important machlokes here between Abaya and Abzeda, whether a woman is obligated in the positive commandment of rejoicing during the 3 Yomim Tovim, which would mean that when the temple is standing, even though according to all opinions, a woman is not obligated to go into the Beis HaMikdash for the 3 regalim. She's not obligated in the mitzvah of Re'iyah. Re'iyah means to be seen and to see in the temple complex. The Torah says clearly, Yerah kol zechurcha. The Torah says men, aside of the fact that it's a positive commandment, that's time bound. But there's a mitzvah of simcha vis, amachta b'chagecha, big machlokes. Is that obligation on the woman? Now, simcha then would mean, b'zman shabeis hamikdash kayim, she has to partake of meat of shlamim, sacrificial meat. She doesn't have to go to the temple for that, but you can only eat shlamim in Yerushalayim. That will mean that she has a chiyuv to go to Yerushalayim, or no, the obligation is on the husband that he has to make his wife happy. Now, if she chooses to go to Yerushalayim, it also will mean he has to give her meat. But if she's not in Yerushalayim, then he has to buy her new garments, he has to buy her jewelry, he has to do that, which will bring her into Jewry. That's a very important machlokes. And finally, the question is, we spoke about it b'kitzur yesterday, a bechor, unique, the din of a bechor is the Torah says it has to be eaten within the year of its birth. Now, a bechor, if it's unblemished, has to be given to a kohen. When the temple is standing, the kohen has to take it as a korban. But it has to happen ideally within the year. How do you count that year? Do you count that year from the birth of the animal? Or do you only count the year from when the animal was allowed to be brought as a korban? And the Torah writes explicitly that no korban is allowed to be brought prior to it being 8 days old. And only and much more. I hope the connection here is good. And let's start again. Davav Amidal of 10 lines from the top of the Amid. Says the Gemara Tanach Rabbanan. As we mentioned in the introduction, it's amazing that to appreciate what we read in Chumash, after we broke apart and analyzed every word in the pasuk that we had on Daf Hey Amid Beis, which is Devarim Chav Gimel, pasuk Chav Beis. 2 verses later, let me just read out the pasuk. Reads Moitza Sifasecha Tishmar Va'asisa, which means that which your lips emit, the words that you say, you should guard and do. Kashen Nodarta, like you vowed. Lashem Elekecha, to Hashem your God. Nidava Asher Dibarta Beficha, that which you spoke. If you appreciate, it's very extra. It sounds like it's repetitive. So first we're going to analyze what every part of the pasuk means, and then we'll see pasuk Chav Dalet is really pasuk Chav Beis. It's the same thing. Why do you need to have 2 psukim? It's all about when you make a vow, if you don't keep it, you're violating a positive commandment, you're violating a negative commandment. So says the Braisa, when the pasuk begins with the words Moitzet Sefasecham, that which literally, that which emerges from your lips, that's the positive commandment to pay your vow. When it says Tishmar, guard, The word tishmar has a negative mitzvah connotation. Like Shmir HaShabbos. Shmir HaShabbos means guard the Shabbos, don't break the Shabbos. Don't work on Shabbos. Tishmar is the mitzvah lois aseh. So if you don't fulfill your vow at a certain point, you'll be violating a lav, which we call bal ta'achar. Ve'asisa, what's the you should do? It already says, moitzes ifasecha tishmar. Ve'asisa means azara lebezdin sheyeh asucha. That when a person is not fulfilling their vow to bring a carbon, there is an obligation on the bezdin to force the person to bring it. What type of force? The pasuk doesn't say. For most people, social pressure is enough. More details in a moment. Next pasuk here, Kevin has the picture. When it says kasha nodarto, end of quote, that refers to a neder. As we spoke out in the introduction, harei olai oilo, harei olai shlamim, any vow to the temple where you said it's on me to bring it, therefore you're going to be chayv and achayis. All of these vows are included in the positive and in the negative. When it says Lashem Alikecha, not needed. Hashem Aleikecha, that refers to obligations that you have to God, not a vow, which is a chatos, an osham, a oila. We're speaking about the oila sri'iyam. The shlamim is going to be, let's say, a shalmei chagigam. Shlamim and an oila could be a neder or an adava, but these oilas shlamim refers to oilas shlamim of obligation. When it says nedava, that's kemashmoi. So there's a vow that you say harei olai. There's a vow that you say harei zu. Vaiter asher dibarta, it's like extra. That which you spoke, you already said moitzes sivosecha. So asher dibarta elu kachir v'lekabayis. Any vow, any donation, not vow, any donation that you give to the bedekabayis is included in the words asher dibarta, and the words beficha refers to tzedakah, a charitable commitment. And we're going to come back to the charitable commitment. And we did mention something when we learned on Daf Dalet, and we're going to go back to Daf Dalet soon. Okay. End of quote. So Amar Mar, the master in the Braisa taught that Moitzes Ifasecha Zubatzvasa say the Gemara is going to have three questions, which really the three questions is the same question. Didn't we learn yesterday that when it says in Parshas Riyeh that Uvasa Shama, Vahavesem Shama, that's Rav Meir. Rav Meir says it's the Asay, it's the Lav. Lamali, why do I have to have another positive commandment to keep your vows of the pledges or the davis that you made for the holy temple? We already have a positive commandment. Question number two, the Tzveita Kasha is Tishmoir, first white line. That's the mitzvahs. Loisasei, right? Don't neglect payment. And if not, you're going to violate Bal Ta'achar. No, Lamali. Why did Hashem have to repeat it? We have a pasuk two psukim earlier. Don't delay to pay your vows. Question number three, when it says v'asisa that you should do. So the Braisa says, that's already a commandment on the Beis Din to, so to say, force you to do it. Azar leBeis Din sheya asucha. Why do I have to have this pasuk over here? Here, where do we learn the concept of Beis Din forcing someone to bring a carbon? In the beginning of Chumash Vayikra, it says an oil karbanoi min habakar zacher tamim yakrivenu el pesach oil moed yakriv oisoi. Yakriv oisoi is extra. It already says zacher tamim yakrivenu. So okay, right, el pesach oil moed, but yakriv oisoi is extra. Says the Braisa Tatanyam yakriv oisoi melamed shekoifen oisoi, that if the person is not bringing his vow, you force him to bring the carbon. Now, Yachol, that sounds like you doing it. Forcing means that the person will end up bringing it against his or her will. No, that can't be, because this pasuk, the pasuk that we just quoted in Vayikra, in the beginning of Vayikra, it says liritzoinai, willingly. So how do you pull this trick off together? How do you force a person to do something willingly? That's a real leadership question. Okay, so this is simple. So you force him. You force him until the person says, I want, not I'll do it, I want to do it, and then you make him do it. In other words, even when a person's willingfulness, let's say, is motivated, it's motivated by the fact that this guy wants to escape coercion. But you tell him to escape the coercion, you have to be willing. That is willing enough. That's the Nigla, the Rambam, which the Hasidus quotes a lot, says, here you see that a Yid has two souls. And there's the real person, the real I is the godly soul. And if there's a mitzvah convent on a Jew The real person, they want to do it. They really want to do it. Elama, the Yetzer Hara, the words of the Rambam, we're going to use the Nefesh HaBahamis, is concealing. I'm not even aware of what I want. So the kfiyah is only on the godly soul. You're only beating the godly. You're beating the animal soul. You're only beating the animal soul. But when the person says, I want, that's taka be'emes. Anyways, so bottom line is, so you have the din of mitzvah saseh. You have the din of lo yisa'acher. You have the din that when it comes to the Beis Hamikdash, if the person doesn't fulfill their vows, based enforces, you have this already before. So the whole pasuk is not needed. Very important to answer. One answer for all the questions. There are two different scenarios, and each one needs to have a pasuk for itself. One pasuk chad do omar v'lo yafresh. What happens if a person makes a commitment? Like Harei Olai, now make a commitment as an adava won't fit. We'll get to that. Harei Olai to bring a Koren Shlamim, and I didn't even designate an animal. That's one type of delaying, for which, when it comes to the first Yom Tov, if you're not even mafresh and bring, but there's one step, mitzvah saseh, mitzvah lo saseh. At some point, Beis Din is going to force you. It's for the person who made the commitment but didn't even designate an animal or designate the item. And then there's another pasuk needed. A person already designated the animal, but they didn't bring it. That a person was already mafresh and v'lo ya'aker if he didn't yet bring it. Now the Achronim make it very clear. Don't think. Let's speak generally that you're over bal ta'acher when 3 Yomim Tovim go by. That's a good general statement. Don't think that you have 3 Yomim Tovim to be mafresh and then another 3 Yomim Tovim to bring it. No. When it's all together. It's all together. From when you made the vow to designate a carbon until when, God forbid, you're going to be violating Bal Ta'achar, you have the 5-way machlekas that we had on Daf Daled Amud Beis, but it's 2 different steps and one doesn't cover the other. And the Gemara speaks it out. Because the Ashmi Inan Amar V'lei Afresh, if there would have been only one pasuk, we're not saying which pasuk goes for which one, but it's irrelevant now. If there only would have been this concept that if you make a commitment and you don't even designate it, then you're violating, that makes sense. You said you will designate and you did it. But once you already designated, even though you didn't bring it, one might have thought, a person is going to say, wherever it is, it's in God's world. It's in God's treasury. Giza or Bei Gaza, the Rachmana Isay. If I pledged, I will bring a carbon shlamim, and I designated the animal, who has the animal right now? I might have argued, Hashem, it's in God's world. Even before you said it was God's, very nice. But you see that it's a step where you would have thought maybe you're not chayiv. So that's why you have to have a tzricha, a pasuk to tell you that even though you already designated it, your commitment was to physically bring it to the Beis Hamikdash. Until that happens, you're in violation. And the same thing in reverse. If there only would have been a pasuk that would have given a person a positive commandment and a negative commandment, only you would have applied it when a person already designated an animal and you didn't bring it. Maybe that's a worse violation. You already designated the animal, go and bring it. You are holding it by you. You're keeping something that is already designated to God. But if you made a commitment that you will separate something for God, but you didn't yet separate it for God, maybe maybe I only made a promise. It's not, it's not yet God's. So tzricha that no. And you know what we learn from over here? These are the famous words that amirasoi ligavoya kimisirasoi lahedit. That just like an act of kinyan is valid in between people, and there's actually a transference when a kinyan is made, words to God, to the Beis Hamikdash, and to tzedakah is a kinyan. That's why you are so bound that you will also violate the positive commandment and the negative commandment. Okay, now we're going to go into a detail. How can you tell me, that one of these psukim are needed for a scenario where you made a commitment, but you didn't yet designate an animal? That's not shayich by an adava. What's the meaning of an adava? An adava means hareizu. An adava means a separation. Omar v'lo yafresh, by a neder is perfect. Harei olai, and then I didn't yet designate. But by an adava, it's not shayich for him. Nedava ksiva and v'tnan is el neder. I'm harei olai. Oilo ve'ezu nedava I'm hareizu. As we spoke on in our introduction, neder, since I put it upon myself, if the animal died, it's not my fault. Or if it was stolen, even when it was not my fault, I am still chayiv b'achrayis. I'm obligated to separate another one. In other words, I have to replace it. But nedava, since I never took anything upon myself, I just designated an animal. Nedava, if the animal died, if the animal was stolen, I'm not chayiv b'achrayis. Point is, nedava means an act of hafrasha. That's the meaning of nedava. How can you have a nedava when you made a commitment, but you didn't? That's not a nedava. The Gemara says no.
Promise on not a specific animal.
The nedava has to be a specific animal, not a promise. It's already the designation. Nedava is the designation. If not, it's not called a nedava. So says the Gemara, no. Amarava, I'll tell you what nedava means. That when a person says harei olai oilo, they are allowed to add on one condition, that I am not chayiv in achrayus. And being that stipulation is effective, even prior to them designating an animal, we call that a nedava commitment, because a nedava means by default an animal for which I'm going to do it once, and if something happens, I'm not going to be responsible. Right. So says the Gemara, Amar Rabba, this is a very important. Tzedakah means a charitable commitment, not to the Beis Hamikdash. Everything we learned now, beginning with Abdalad, Amad Aleph in the bottom. When the Brisa gave all these examples, Chayavi Hadamim, Ba'arachim, Ba'acharam, Ba'agdeshus, Chatois, Hashamas, Oilos, Maisres, at least Maiser Sheni, connected to Yerushalayim, Bukhar, right? Maiser Behema, then Maisres was Maiser Disha, Maiser Sheni. The one that's not shaykh to the temple, to the Yerushalayim is Tzedakah. So says Rava, you know what? Tzedakah machayiv alola alter. You're chayiv, if you don't right away pay up your vow, you're chayiv the mitzvah say, and you're chayiv bal ta'achar. There's a big problem with this. The Brisa included tzedakah on Daf Daled. We're going to get back to that in a moment. We mentioned it to kids, so now we're going to go back to it. So first of all, where did Rava get it for? So Rava gives a simple, it's a seichel, it's a svara. Because since the hakaina aniyim, the ani needs tzedakah without delay, it doesn't make sense that God will say, you have X amount of time until you fulfill your pledge. An ani needs the tzedakah. We're speaking about an ani. You made a pledge to charity that needs the money immediately. The Gemara says, Pshita. Rav is so rational, why did he even have to say it? No, the saying a big chiddush. Mao the tema kiven the inyana the karbanis ksiva. The Torah is alluding to tzedakah with the words beficha. The words beficha, as we just learned today, is in pasuk chav dalet. All else, every other word in that verse is speaking about karbanos. So since God included tzedakah in the general rules of promising, committing to bring a carbon to Hashem, so you would think it should be bound by the same rules of karbanos. Again, I know there are 5 shitas in the Tanach, but generally you have a certain period, and only afterwards are you violating. Komash Malan, no Hassan who the Telinu Rachmana b'regalim, by karbanos there is a link to a regal. Avol hacha loy, but tzedakah has nothing to do with a passage of regalim. Why the shchicha aniyim, and therefore you violate the negative loy sa'acher l'shalmoi immediately. Now there are many nuances. First of all, if a person makes a pledge to tzedakah and it's known that the way this tzedakah collects it is over a period of time, that's known. Just like we just learned when it comes to these stipulations. Harei olai amanasha ini chayv ba'achriyusa. That's fine. You're not chayv and achrayus. If it's known from the outset that you're going to pay it out, there's no bal ta'achar. We're speaking about a scenario where you made a pledge, where you understood when you made the pledge, it was clear that you will pay this now, it's needed now, and then you delayed, you're violating Bal Ta'achar. Problem again is, didn't we have a Davdal of the Brisa that said clearly that tzedakah is the 5-way machloikas Tanaim was regarding tzedakah. So I'm going back to Davdal Damadalov. I'm learning the second to last Tosfos. So when the Brisa says tzedakah so maisras, Tosfos, Fahada Amar Rabba Lakaman and Davvav, he's quoting what we just learned right now, that tzedakah machai valola alter. So answers Tosfos, Hanamila de Kaima Aniyim. That's Nakoda. When there are Aniyim here, and therefore they need your pledge, and you don't pay, you're violating loy sa'achar. But the Braisa and Davdalad that says that for tzedakah you have a certain period of time, that is when there are no aniyim here. So you have to go look for aniyim. You're not chayiv to go look for aniyim right away. That's the answer of Tosfos. I just want to add one. There's so much to speak about, but it's not that. It's a bit late.
So when giving to someone where there's no aniyim and there's 3 Yom Tov to pass on,
Aniyah means if they, whatever you pledge to, if they are not available for you to give it to them. A person makes a pledge to Cheder Menachem, the default is give it right away, unless you tell the recipient they need it right away, that I'm going to pay out my pledge as I could, or I'm going to pay out my pledge over 5 years. I'm going to pay out my pledge over 1 year. That's not a problem.
so when would this apply?
When a person makes a commitment. I would say that most at least organizations right now understand that pledges won't be paid right away. But if there's an ani, there's an ani. Let me tell you how many poskim apply this halacha. Do you know that there are people that hold that al pi halacha? If you have hungry people around your table Friday night, you're not allowed to say Shalom Aleichem Eshes Chayil before Kiddush. Some people pass on that way. You have to say it during the fish course. Why? Because someone is hungry. They invited you to the house to eat. We're not speaking about today. No one is hungry in America. Sometimes people are hungry also. You just don't know about it. Someone is hungry. You're delaying. Come home and you're schmoozing and you're singing and you're adding a miggin and you're benching your kids and this guy is dying from hunger. According to some opinions, you're violating. I think there were certain Litvish Gedolim that whenever they had a guest in Europe, people were starving. They never said Shalom Aleichem Eshes Chayil until the first course was served. No, Shalom Aleichem and all the good Zachen. You have to make kiddush and go eat. This kind, if someone needs what you have, what to give, don't linger. How true this is. Sooner or later, most people go under that circumstance. They need it, it's there, and they're socializing. All right. Omar Rava. Says Rava. Now, once Kivin Sha'avan Olav Regel Echad, regarding everything we learned above. Oiver Ba'asei. In other words, yeah, we mentioned that there's 3 to Golem, but the positive commandment that we learned yesterday, that it says, Uvasa Shama Bahavesam Shama, by Karbanos, everyone will hold that the first Yom Tov, anyways, you have to be in the Holy Temple. That's what God says. You're coming here anyways, bring all of your pledges. Says in a Mishnah in Eiduyois, hey, Rabbi Yeshua, Rapapayis, Al-Vlad Shalomim, if a person, Rashi writes, either designated a already pregnant animal as a shlamim, or if a person designated a non-pregnant animal as a shlamim. But prior to them bringing the animal got pregnant, and now it gave birth. Either case. So what's the status of the vlad? So Rabbi Eliezer holds that the child is not offered. We're not going to go into the details of Shitas Rabbi Eliezer, but here comes along Rabbi Yishana Papais, and they disagree with Rabbi Eliezer. And they say, al vlad shlamim, that an offspring of a carbon shlamim, shiyakriv shlamim, it's brought just like the mother. Now, Amar of Papayis, I know that this is true. I'll testify. We had a cow that was designated to be a shlamim offering, and we ate the mother on Pesach, and v'achalnu v'lada shlamim b'chag. Just to prove, not like Rabbi Eliezer, that the offspring b'chlal is not brought. The offspring is brought. Now hold on. If lat shlamim has a din of a shlamim, I know balta achar you have more time. But now that Rav is saying that according to everyone, one Yom Tov goes by, you're going to be chayiv on the positive commandment of Vasar Beis Shama. How did they wait until Chag? Chag normally means Sukkot. If they brought the animal on Pesach, you have to bring it on the first Yom Tov. And the Gemara says, Bishleima, to ask on Pesach, the second to last line, on Pesach itself, they didn't bring it. I can tell you why. Because Ema, perhaps the Mechusar's manhava, the animal was premature. The pasuk says again that every animal, for the first 7 days it should be with its mother. You can only bring it as a carbon on the 8th day on. I'll tell you something even more, Cheder. When an animal is born, we will learn in Bechayres the natural gestation period for every type of animal. Chazal told us. If we don't know for sure that the animal was properly in the mother's womb for that period of time, if there's a suffix, if the animal is a premature animal possibly will die. In such a case, shechita won't even allow you to eat it, even non-kachim. You have to wait the full 7 days, only on the 8th day. Whatever the pinyan haben is, we learned this together. 30 days for a human being. That's why we do the pinyan haben on the 31st day. Because now the 30 days went by, the child is not a nafil, now you have to give the coin the money, same thing by an animal. By kachim, regardless, even if you know that it's called shekalu loy chadashim, that the animal was gestated all of the amount of time. So maybe what happened was there was an animal that the mother gave birth on the first day of Pesach. Pesach is only 7 days. So they didn't bring the Vlad on Pesach because during the Yom Tiv, the animal wasn't 8 days old. But Ella Vlada Batseres, if Rav is correct, and according to all of the opinions, the asay and the lav don't go together. You violate the asay after one Yom Tov goes by and you don't bring it. They should have been obligated to bring it on Shavuos. So the Gemara answers, in the name of Rava. We're going to have actually 2 answers. Answer number 1, keep going. Vav, Amid Beis. That's a very interesting halacha. If an animal is sick, not sick in a way that it's halachically set aside from it ever being used. Animal is sick. A sick animal may not be brought as a carbon. Could be the animal got sick. And that's why they only brought it on and if you can't bring it, you're not going to violate the positive commandment. But Ravashi says, no. That when it says that they testify, you should know that the word chag is a generic word. Chag hamatzah is oichet. Chag means Shavuos. He says it must mean chag Shavuos. Now, the Gemara says the first Amoiram, Rab Zvid, in the name of Rava, did not want to give that answer because, chag is a generic word. But whenever you are specifying the names of the Yom Tovim, as he did, that I testified that we ate it on Pesach, if you call Pesach, not chag, then you call Shavuos Atzeres, and not chag. Chag means Sukkos. That kol heicha, the Tani Pesach, Tana Atzeres. Anyways, these are the 2 approaches. But Rava is not refuted, and another din of Rava, many dinim of Rava. He amends the Mesoiras Hashas. Amar Rava. Kivin she'avru ala gimel galim, or any other amount of time for which that shita will hold your chayiv in loy sa'achar l'shalmoi. You know, it's not that you violate bal ta'achar once. B'chol yoyim v'yoyim over bal ta'achar. And it makes so much sense because since you cannot bring a carbon at night, if you can't bring a carbon at night, that means that at night it's not shaykh. The next morning, you are able to. Again, you're going to violate. The night breaks the days to your detriment. But if there would be the possibility of bringing it day and night, then you can argue you're violating it once. The deadline passed and you are in violation. Very good. Meisvei, how can you say that you're...
Rabbi, is there a malchus for Bata'achar?
Oh, so we spoke about this. Not even know we spoke about that.
I know, but I'm saying, would he potentially be chayiv malchus 100 times?
Some of the say like this, that if the person who did not bring it decided never to bring it, and only God knows that, then theoretically the chayiv malchus. Very much as people say that if you don't do a bris milah, you chayiv kares, right? One of the 2 positive commandments. Now, you can still do a bris milah. So one approach is if a person doesn't do a bris milah and they decide never to do it, they're already chayiv kares. They make that link.
Right, but you can't get kares more than once. Whereas malchus, you could get 100 times.
That's right.
I'm saying, are you saying that every single day is chayiv malchus again and again and again?
Exactly. Yeah. Meisvei says in a brayso, echad b'chor, and again we had this on daf. Hey, Amid Beis, Rashi quoted the pasuk by a Bukhar. It says, "Lifnei Hashem lekechot echlenu shana b'shana." There's something about the Torah says a Bukhar has to be eaten that year. Now we learned also yesterday. If you didn't eat it that year, then the person violated, but the Bukhar is valid. But you should eat it the year and echad kol hakachim. Again, we have the consensus. We're going with the general statement that when 3 Yomim Tovim go by, you're violating Bal Ta'achar. So here, look at the words of the Braisa. Kivin she'avar aleh shana b'lo galim. If either a year goes by, even if 3 holidays did not go by, now how is that possible? We will discuss this soon. Or 3 Yomim Tovim went by without a year. That's easy, right? Let's go with Rab Shimon. Even if the 3 have to be in the sequence of Pesach, Shavuos, or Sukkos. If a person makes a pledge Erev Pesach to bring out carbon shalom, Erev Pesach, they're going to be chayiv bal ta'achar after Sukkos, after the end of Shmini Atzeres. That's a half a year. I mean, a little bit more than a half a year. That's it. Or you go with Rosh Hashana, you violate bal ta'achar. Now hold on. How is this a problem with Rava? Rava says that once you're chayiv bal ta'achar b'chol yom v'yom. So they in the yeshiva, they says, but look at this. So very rare. So the Gemara says, what's this? How does this refute? They didn't chap. So the other chevron in the yeshiva asked, "V'haimai tiyufte? Why are you b'chlal bringing this to refute Rava? What do you see here that challenges Rava? What's the kasha against Rava?" So Amar Rav Kahana, I'll tell you why. Man the komoisav, shaper komoisav. Don't make away. The guy in the yeshiva that brought this brayso against Rava was saying good. Because michti tana alavi komahader. See, we never had this detail until now. Now the Braisa is trying to find different scenarios when you will violate. Either a year without regalim, one option of violating, or regalim without a year. He's giving you different cases when you'll violate. He should have added, or every single day. In other words, since this Tana is finding different scenarios when you violate Balta Achad, if what Rav is saying is true, the Braisa should have said this also. That once that either of these options happened, Bikan Ulahalon, every day you're violating Balta Achad. So B'chol Yom V'Yom, every Balta Achad, he should have said that. Litni, the Braisa should have mentioned that which Rav is saying. But the Gemara says, okay, at least I get that there's a problem, but I know the answer. V'idach, meaning Rava, Tana lemikbe'ei balave komahader. Yeah, he's looking for different scenarios when the lav will be established. But once the lav is established, whether it's only once or whether it's every day, the Tana is not discussing that. Balave you say to like komahader. But this Braisa is looking for different scenarios that will establish the initial balta achad. Now the second scenario is self-understood. 3 Yomim Tovim, even though there's no year. But Gufa, we learned before, either a year went by without 3 Yomim Tovim, or 3 Yomim Tovim went by without a year, you violate Balta Achar. So it says the Gemara, Bishleim, in this second scenario to go, like we mentioned. Pesach Shavuos Sukkos. How is it even possible? How is it even possible? And every year you have 3 to go. Now, Zok the Gemara like this. If we're going to follow at least in part, the Shita of Kisidron, who holds Kisidron? Rab Shimon Bar Yochai. So let me tell you how Mishkachas law. I'll tell you what happened over here. A person made a vow in Iyar. Now, it's like Rab Shimon, but not like Rab Shimon. Because according to Rab Shimon, if you make a vow in Iyar, when are you violating Balta Achar? No. Kisidron. Rab Shimon holds that that's the Mishnah, that the Echad Nisan Rosh Hashana Liragolim. Kisidron means that it has to be 3, but you have to begin with Chag HaMatzos. So if I made a vow in Iyar, the Braisa said that on Dav Dalet. So there's times that 5 Yomim Tovim have to pass until I violate. According to Reb Shimon, you're only going to be chayiv after Sukkot of next year. Because the first Yom Tov after the year is Sukkot, but you don't count Sukkot first. It has to be Pesach first. Chag HaMatzos is Chag HaShuv, is Chag HaSukkot. So according to Reb Shimon, I can explain that this Tana will be a 6th opinion. It's going to be like Reb Shimon, but it won't be like Reb Shimon. This Tana is going to tell you that even though from Iyar to Iyar, you went over 3 Yomim Tovim, but not Kesidron, so it's not Regolim, you're going to be Chayiv anyways. Well, it has to be Kesidron. But if a year went by, Shana B'Shana, the words from B'char, even though it wasn't Kesidron, you're going to be Chayiv anyway, is good. But Elolaman Beleis Le Kesidron, which is the Chachamim, the Tanakama of both prices, it's not about Kesidron. Whenever 3 Yomim Tovim go by, you're going to be Chayiv. So if a guy makes a pledge in Iyar, so let me tell you. So what's the next one? Shavuos. What's the next one? Sukkos. What's the next one? Pesach. Pesach is over on the 22nd of Nisan. And that's it. That's before a year. Before a year went by, 3 to Golan went by. Find me a case where you're going to have a year without 3 to Golan. And another detail. Another Kanech. Yes, we spoke out of the introduction. Let me give you the scenario. We had this either in Beitza or in Sukkah. I think we had this in Sukkah. That when a person sells a house in a walled city, we're speaking all in Eretz Yisrael during the times of Yovel. So they're different. Normally, whatever I sell is really only a lease, because in Yovel, everything goes back to the original owners. There are exceptions to that. One exception is that if I own a house in a walled city, if I sell it, on one hand, I, the seller, have the right to buy it back within a year. within a year, I have a shana tamima to buy it back against the will of the buyer. It means the guy who bought it doesn't make any investments for the first year because he might lose it. But if a year goes by and I don't buy it back with all the details, I cannot borrow money to buy it back. There's many pratim. But if I don't buy it back, then it's the property of the buyers forever. It doesn't go back to the seller in year. Now, what's a year? What's a year? Is it that, again, let's go to year. A person sells it Rosh Chodesh year. Do they have until Rosh Chodesh year? Rebbe holds a year, not only here, also here. In halacha, a year means 365 days. So according to Rebbe that holds that a year means 365, then the case of the Braisa will be in a leap year, as we'll explain. But first we're going to quote Rebbe. The Tanya, when it says Shana Tamima, that the seller has a Shana Tamima to buy it back, and Rebbe says, what is a Shana Tamima? Not the calendar date. Hello, not the calendar date, but Moine Gimel Meyas Rishishim Hamisha Yoim. You count 365 days. What's the number 365? Kiming and Yemoisa Chamam, which are the amount of days that it takes for the sun to come back to its same place, vis-a-vis the constellations.
Why would they go to Yemoisa Chamam?
That's a kasha, okay, but that's not, and by the way, that's not only here. We're going to learn about the Sol Sugya soon. Is good. The Chachamim say no, that the halacha of selling a bias bebate orechaima, but not only here. When the Torah speaks about a year means Moina either Yud Beis Chodesh Moyim. Year means date. Like we know, if something happened on Tezvav Iyar, a year is Tezvav, next year Tezvav. So if it's a common year, it's going to be 12 months. And Im Nisabra Shana, Nisabra Loi, the seller will benefit. According to Rebbe, the seller never benefits. Because if you have a leap year by us, how many days does a leap year have? Either 383, 384, 385. That's much more than 365. You have to add more days to compensate for the lesser days of a lunar year. So according to the Chachamim, again over here, according to Rebbe, what will be the case? I'll tell you what the case will be. A person makes a pledge, let's just say on Yud Zayin Nisan. Second day Chol HaMoed. I want to make another thing. We spoke it out in the beginning. When we speak about a Yom Tov going by or 3 Yom Tovim, it's full Yom Tovim. If I make a pledge to bring something already in middle of Yom Tov, even though I'm already in Yerushalayim, that Yom Tov doesn't count for these dinim. So I made a pledge Yud Zayin Nisan. When there is a leap year, when does the date end? Chaf Zayin Adar. And therefore, Chaf Ches Adar, according to Rebbe, if it's only 365, so you had a year go by, Chaf Ches Adar, the first Pesach didn't count because I made my pledge already inside Pesach. How many Yom Tovim went by? Only Shavuos and Sukkot. I'm still before Nisan. So then it's good. But according to the Chach, so Mishkachas Lo Rebbe, the Agdish of Basar Chagamatzis doesn't mean after the Yom Tov. It means, I'm just giving you an example. You can do it after Pesach also, but the Gemara says that when the end of Adar comes, you already violated. So that's why I'm giving you an example. The end of Adar, if you made your pledge after Pesach, it's going to be before Pesach the next year, but it's going to be in the month of Nisan. But okay, but say that, you're not going to have 3 Yom Tovim. The Chimat Shili Adar Basra, once the end of the second Adar, if there's a leap year, Shana Malya, you completed the year, according to Rebbe, 365 days passed, but yet, Uragalam Leimalu. So that would work.
The case of Rabbi could be also less than
100%. We're just finding where can there be a scenario that a person makes a pledge and a year goes by and not 3 Yom Tovim. So according to Rebbe, it works. But the Rabbanan say that a year means the date. I don't understand. If I make a pledge, no matter when the pledge was, 1 year later in a Jewish year, you're going to have 3 Yom Tovim. In most cases, it takes less than a year, but in a year, in every year, look at our calendar. In every year, you're going to have 3 Yom Tovim.
But again, you want that full.
Even for full.
If you make a pledge in the middle of Pesach, so last day here, you don't have full.
So it must be that if you make it in the middle of Pesach, when you come to that date, maybe you connect. You have to connect. So the Gemara answers, and let me say this by heart. Now we are beginning to learn about the making of the Jewish calendar. Now, even though according to almost all the side of Rabbeinu Hanano, the ideal way for us to establish a calendar is for two witnesses to come and testify for the Sanhedrin that they saw the new moon. And only based on their testimony do you establish that day as Rosh Chodesh. We were told by Moshe Rabbeinu, who learned from God Almighty, exactly how the heavenly bodies move. And we know that a lunar month is 29 and a half days and a bit. We will deal with the bit later. We also already spoke out on Daf Hey, I think on top, that Menei Yomim B'Kadosh Chodesh means that we cannot begin Rosh Chodesh in middle of the day. The units that are used to count towards a month, a full unit will be Rosh Chodesh. Now, if really a month is 29 and a half days, but you can't make Rosh Chodesh in the middle of the day, how can you establish Rosh Chodesh keeping it the closest possible to the real Moilad of the Levana? You know how? By having 1 month be 29 days and the next month 30 days. Simple. 29, 30, 29, 30. When you do that, every 2 months averages out 29 and 30. Each month was more average 29 and a half days. Now, that's not perfect, and we'll have to deal with the not perfect, but that works. Rab Shemaya holds that even when there was a Sanhedrin, they needed always to establish the months. One day would have 29 days, one day would have 30 days. Which means that even if the moon was not sighted because it was cloudy, they established Rosh Chodesh nonetheless. Every year, it was Malay Chassid. Malay means a full month, 30-day month. Chassid means a deficient month, 29 months. If that's the case, and these pictures, I don't know if they help, but it'll have a nice picture here. If that's the case, if it's always going to be that way, Kedarab Shemayo. No, not like Rab Shemai. Why do you need the Edom? Because ideally we want to establish it based on the testimony. Just like nowadays, Shlomo, there is no Edom, and we establish Rosh Chodesh without Edom. It's better to have Edom. We want to have Edom, but if there is no Edom, they make Rosh Chodesh nonetheless. Okay. If you don't follow this opinion, and you need the Edom, then will this month have 30 days or 29 days? It doesn't depend on whether the Moilad really happened. It depends whether Edom saw it. Which means it's possible for Nisan to have 30 days and for Iyar to have 30 days. It's also possible for Nisan to have 29 days, it's possible, and for Iyar to have 29 days. If that's something that we are open to, now it's not possible. Now we have an established calendar. Now there are 2 months in the year that vary, which is Cheshvan and Kislev, but all the other months are Mali Chasr. But we're going back then. So Yakir, let me ask you a question. When is Shavuos? What's the answer? What day is Shavuos? Okay, what day is Sukkot? The 15th of Tishrei. The Torah says that. What day is Pesach? The 15th of Nisan. What day is Shavuos?
6th of Kislev.
Doesn't say in the Torah 6th of Kislev.
Sivan.
It says in the Torah the 50th day from the Omer. Now hold on. If Nisan and Iyar are always consistent, one is 30 days, one is 29 days, then Shavuos will always be on the 6th of Sivan, like you said, which is the way our calendar is made. 6th of Sivan. But if you don't, you're not fixed. Even though it should be, but it doesn't have to turn out that way. It could be Shavuos is going to be on the 5th of Sivan. How will that happen? If Nisan has 30 days and Iyar has 30 days, then when you counted 50 days, you're only up to the 5th of Sivan. If Nisan and Iyar, if both of them only have 29 days, you know when the 50th day is going to be? On the 7th of Sivan. On the 7th of Sivan. We mark the Yartzeit of Shlomo HaMelech today on the 7th of Sivan. And we know David HaMelech. And David HaMelech passed away on Shavuos. V'Yishayach. That's how it's Shayach. It's on the 2nd day Shavuos. He passed away on Shavuos, was on the 7th of Sivan. And if one is Mali, one is Chassid, then it's on the 6th day. Now you have the answer. If we are open to that variation, let me tell you exactly what happened. In year number 1, it was Shavuos, on the 5th. Shavuos is only 1 day. This genius made a pledge on the 6th. On the 6th. When is a full year? Not ready. On the 6th. If next year both months were Chasedos, which means if next year Shavuos will be on the 7th, then you go from the 6th of Sivan to the 6th of Sivan. If the 6th was afterwards, when you made the pledge, Shavuos passed already. For you to have 3 Golim, you have to have Shavuos. That's how it's shiur. Gavaldik. So let's read it inside. So the Gemara says, I'll tell you how. It will follow Rab Shemaya. Rab Shemaya doesn't subscribe that the calendar needs to be 29:30, 20. It doesn't have to be that way. So and therefore, Atzeres, Shavuos, sometimes will be on the 5th of Sivan. It has to be on the 50th day of the Omer. How do you get to the 50th day? The bigger the months, the more every month ate up from the count, then the earlier you're on in Sivan, and you're going to hit day 50. Sometimes it's going to be on the 6th of Sivan. That's if 1 month is 30 days, 1 month is 29 days. And sometimes, if both months are only 29 days, it's going to be Shiva. So, let me tell you what happened. That Shneim Aleim, both months were full. And therefore, year number 1, Shavuos was on the 5th. If both of them are Chasedim, then it's on Shiva. Again, like we explained. So there was Shavuos on the 5th. This person makes a pledge, to bring a shlamim. He makes that statement on the 6th of Sivan, that's after Shavuos. If the next year Shavuos is only on the 7th, he's chayiv on the 6th, not on the 7th. Before the 3 Golim came, 1 year passed. However, Uman, Tana, the Palig, Alei, Rab Shemaya, not everyone agrees with this. And just to know who is the author of the one who disagrees with him, that's Achedim. Again, Achedim is one of them, is for a period of time, we called Rabbi Meir the others. The Tanya Achedim Oimrim, no. It must be Mali Chaser, Mali Chaser, Mali Chaser. And therefore, he says it in another context. He's saying it in the context is, what day of the week was this year Rosh Hashana? According to Achedim, you will know what day of the week will be next year's Rosh Hashana. You'll know. Because if every month is Mali Chaser, Mali Chaser, if it's that way, then it will always come out that Ein Bein Atzeres Latzeres. Just giving you an example. If you want to know what day of the week will be Shavuos or Rosh Hashana, Ela Dalad Yom Levad will be 4 days. No, it's if Rosh Hashana was on Sunday, even though Lo Yadu Rosh, but let's say if Rosh Hashana will be on Sunday, then next year Rosh Hashana will be on Thursday. If it's always fixed. And if there is V'mois Rosh Hashana Me'oberes, so being that when they add an extra other, again, according to Achedim, it's always 1 month, 30 days, 1 month, 29 days. So it's going to be, there's going to be one of it, it's going to be a 29-day month. The second, the other Asamach Lenissan has 29 days. The weeks cancel themselves out. 29 is 28. How much days do you have above the 28 one? There'll be 5-day difference. No, it's according to Achedim, there's always Mali Chaser, and therefore, according to Achedim, if he won't hold like Rebbe, if he won't hold like Rab Shimon, but not like Rab Shimon, you'll never have a year where you don't have 3 to go. Okay, let's hop on another few lines. Boy Rab Zeta. Says Rab Zeta, let's try to conclude this sugya to the best of our ability. Rab Zeta wants to know, Yoirish, a dad, a person, makes a pledge. According to some opinions, he designated the animal. Only then do the heirs have to bring it. According to other opinions, just the words. If she, Buddha, the Oiraisa, even if the father did not designate an animal, since he left real estate, the real estate is automatically liened and an animal of a carbon must be brought. So the heir has to bring a carbon. But, Yoirish, Ma'u Babalta Achar. Do we say, it says in Pasuk Chav days, that if you will make a vow, etc., etc., and that he did not make a vow. Or no, use the words, it says in Parshas Re'eh, the positive commandment, Uvasa Shama, when you get there, bring your commitments. Well, I have to bring my commitment for Hamachayev. So, and you can argue that since the Asay is going to be Chal, maybe the Lav will also be Chal. So Tashema, the answer is clear from Abraisa. The Tani Rabchia, that when it says Me'imach, that the Loisa Achar L'Shalmei Me'imach from you, meaning Platli Yodesh, a Yodesh will never be Chayv Amal. They have to bring it, but they won't be in violation of the Slav. Did we not learn yesterday? Me'imach comes to include Leka Chikhan Peya, where the Torah uses the words Me'imach by all these 3. So the Gemara answers, you can learn both. Imach alludes to Leka Chikhan Peya. Imach. Es ha'ani imach. Me'imach is coming to tell you, not from the Yodesh. Another question. Boy, Rab Zera, Isha hi ibai Balta Acher. Is a woman going to be violating Balta Acher? Now, she is definitely not obligated to go to the temple. But according to some opinions, she is obligated to go to Yerushalayim. So you can argue, since you have to go to Yerushalayim anyways, you might as well bring it. And if you don't bring it, you're going to violate Baal Ta'achar. In the mitzvah of Re'iyah, and Re'iyah is Shalish Pa'amam Bashana Yeruah Kol Zechurcha. It's Pnei. That's in the Beis HaMikdash, and therefore, since she's not chayiv to go to the temple, we can't penalize her if she did not bring it in the love of Baal Ta'achar. Taka does not demand for her to go to the temple, because simcha means to have simchas shalmei chagiga, the shlamim. You don't eat it in the temple, you eat it in Yerushalayim. But you can say, since she has to go to Yerushalayim, you might as well bring it. So Amalei Abaye says, I don't get your question. Since she's obligated in the mitzvah of simcha, since she's that close, it makes sense. If you're that close anyways, and you don't bring it, you're going to be in violation. Abaya says she has to be that close. Abaya holds that the obligation of Simchas Yom Tov is never on the woman. The obligation is on the man. Now, again, if she happens to be in Yerushalayim, of course, part of her simcha will be to have the meat of the shlamim, but really she doesn't have to go there at all. And how will the husband make her rejoice? Look inside the second to last line of Nashi. So, Bib Bavel, the big date Savainim. In Babel, what made women happy? Colored garments. In Eretz Yisrael, by the Charedim, in Yerushalayim, if you're going to put on a colored garment, you'll get stoned. Maybe not to death. So you're not going to have simcha. So there was the big day Pishton Hamiguhats, and they would have to give you pressed linen garments. You have to know every location, right? What makes a woman happy? You have to know what locale. But there's never a mitzvah on the woman, so how can Abaya say it? So the Gemara answers, indeed. Abaya holds that a woman is not mechuyev in the mitzvah of simcha. Abaya holds that the husband is obligated to bring joy to his wife. She's not obligated to go to Yerushalayim. But Abaya was telling Rab Zeder, you Rab Zeder, who holds that the chiyuv of simcha is on a woman. So why are you asking whether a woman is going to be chayv and Baal Ta'achar? According to you, yes, she will be. Because like we had on Amadallah, like if the ani is here, you made a pledge to the ani, give it to the ani. If you're anyways in the location where you could fulfill and you don't fulfill, then you are in violation. We're almost finished. We'll stop over here. God willing to be continued.
Yeah.
Thank you, Rabbi.